Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah Babins, and this episode is special because I was featured on the Penguin Magic podcast, invited by Eric Tate, who is a phenomenal interviewer. And if you are one who listens to many Magic podcasts, which you might, I still love you. If you are, then you probably have seen this already on the Penguin Magic podcast. But if you haven't, I am attaching the episode here for your enjoyment. I'm going to remind you at the end, but I was nominated. This is a crazy sentence. I was nominated for Magic Podcaster to win a FISM award, which is bonkers. And the way to win the award is via voting. So I'm going to put the link in the description of this episode. If you take 30 seconds out of your life to vote for Discourse in Magic, if you've ever enjoyed an episode of this podcast here, then it would mean the world to me. And by the way, I'll have no idea if you did it. So this is just me asking you, begging you, pleading you, please vote for me. But other than that, enjoy this episode all about how the podcast exists, how I pick guests, and how the Mastermind works, and how I help magicians hit six figures and beyond. A lovely episode. You're going to enjoy it. Here it is, an episode with Eric Tate from the Penguin Magic podcast.
Welcome to the Penguin Magic Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Tate. We have a great show for you this week. I'm going to dive straight into the main event. Jonah Babins is one of the most popular magic podcasters in the world. His podcast, Discourse in Magic, has been running for 9 years, and he has interviewed hundreds of the most important magicians in the world. Lately, he's turned his eye to the world of business coaching. He runs the Toronto Magic Company with his business partner, Ben Train, and has built a very successful career performing all over Canada. Now, he runs the Mastermind, a business development community for magicians that is seeing revenues rise across the workers of magic. I wanted to find out more about this unique group and where it came from. I caught up with Jonah via Zoom, and now you get to join our conversation. Jonah Babins, thanks so much for joining me here on the Penguin Magic Podcast. This has been a long time coming because I think, don't you have like the longest running magic podcast in the world?
Have to give that award to the Magic Word, who is Scott Wells, whose podcast has been going on, feels like, since before I was born. And he also puts out like multiple episodes every week. And it's really a fantastic show because he's doing like journalism out there. Like he's like, here's day one of this convention and day two. So I have to give that award to him. There were certainly lots that existed when I started, but I'm the only one who didn't give up. You know, I haven't given up yet for the length that it's been. So Scott gets that award, but I've certainly been at it for a while.
Discourse in Magic has been around for a long time. I know I've been on the show. You've got an interesting way of getting guests. You like require guests to connect you with other guests. That's a bold tactic.
It's kind of a bit because so anyways, just to explain the tactic, at the end of every episode, every guest is asked to recommend another guest that would be a good fit for the show and also that they can put us in contact with, so they can't just be like David Blaine. Even though it's awesome, and I will say I have certainly used that a lot, really, I just follow my interests, you know, like I really actually don't chase all those threads down, because if you can imagine, it ends up being like, if every guest really does recommend another guest, then it's impossible for me to select anyone, and I just have this long list. And what I learned is that I can't interview people whose stuff I don't know very well, because it makes for an awful interview. So I've made that mistake a handful of times. And now when someone recommends a person to me who like I don't really know that well, I just politely thank them. And then if the moment comes in the future where I know who they are or learn it, whatever, I will chase down that lead. But for the most part, I follow my interests, and people message me all the time asking to be on it. And like, literally the thing that decides if they can be on it is how familiar with their stuff I am. And, you know, if there's stuff that I love, and if I'm not, then it's like, maybe in the future when you like, you know, enter my sphere of stuff that I'm like interested in. But so it's kind of a bit. I mean, I don't really follow all of those chains down, but certainly it's helped me a couple times.
You are a great interviewer, though. You ask some fascinating questions. And I think it is precisely because of what you just said, is that you only have on people whose stuff you are aware of, which I think I don't think that people who listen to podcasts realize how hard it is to interview someone whose stuff you don't know.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
It's brutal to interview people whose stuff you don't know, and they end up you end up both you giving short questions and them giving short answers. And like my hack for being a good interview is kind of embarrassing, which is like I'm just really curious and I just ask them what I'm curious about, and I try to lower the level of my question to be more broadly applicable. Like I'll just tell a weird story, which is when I interviewed Tamari. So I called in every favor that I could to interview him. I got a green light to fly to Madrid to interview him. And this was it was actually right in the tail end of the Magic Rainbow coming out because I attended a Magic Rainbow show slash party there in Madrid. And I had this interesting challenge with the interview, which was like, I am obsessed with his stuff. I've read everything and I eat it all up. And I had this interesting challenge, which is like, if I ask him questions about the philosophies and writings in those giant, incredible books, then I'm presupposing that the thousands of listeners have read those books, which I know that they haven't, especially the Magic Rainbow. Or do I basically give him, underhand pitches to get him to say the exact same thing that he said in the book again for the listeners who don't read these magic books and to give them an opportunity to get into that theory? So I kind of towed the line a little bit in the interview. And there was a couple times, and I don't know if it made the final edit, but there's a couple times where I was like, I gave him this underhand of like, can you explain this thing to me? And he was like, explain it. I wrote it in great detail in the book. I'm like, no, I know that you wrote it in the book, but I'm trying to like, pass it on to them. So sometimes I can't, sometimes I have a unique challenge like that, but a lot of the times I just do my best to follow my interest, and I try to ask questions that are a little bit more applicable to more than just me. But like, honestly, I interview people for my pleasure and my info and, for me. And I would say about 60% of the questions that I'm asking are like, because I'm curious and because I want to know.
It's hosting a podcast for a long period of time. You do start to find that you are deeply fascinated by certain things. And I almost wonder if our audiences realize that they've self-selected into our own deep interests, because you have to keep your own interest level up in the podcast in order to keep doing it for as long as you have.
Yeah, I mean, what happened to me is, when it originally started, I started it with a magician named Tyler Williams, who is no longer a magician anymore, but still a great friend of mine. And when we started it, it was like all about the theory and philosophy of magic, which is how we arrived at the name Discourse in Magic, which like now I kind of regret, because I mean, like, it's fine, people know it, it's a brand, but like I kind of regret it because that makes it feel like it's about the ruminations about magic, which is like so not where I have headed in my magic life and magic career. Now I'm like uber practical. Like all I want to know about is the business, the story, how you make your act really good, how you come up with stuff. Like that's like the stuff that really tickles me. So over the course of the years, I mean, it started in 2016, so however long that is, 9 years. Holy gosh. Um, that's crazy. In my head, I was like 6 years, but it's nine. Since then, my interests have changed, and I assume, as the numbers and the email subscribers show, that so has, the people that used to listen to it for philosophical ruminations on magic are kind of like, hey, you're asking a lot of questions about the business and making money and stuff like that. And like, I just do this for fun and buy cool products when they come out. And they're probably not listening anymore. And then the people that are really practical, like now I get a lot of emails from people being like, I listen to this in the green room before I go on stage just because it gives me something fun and interesting. And it's always about performing and career and stuff like that. So as my interests have changed, so has the audience. But I'm pumped. Like, for me, the podcast is like I do the coaching, which we'll talk about in a second, but
Yeah.
like the podcast is just my like fun little thing. It's not even how most people find me, for the coaching. So like I don't really honestly I log in every like 6 months to look at numbers and just go like, huh. I guess that's how many people listen to it. And like otherwise, I really don't even think about it. It's honestly purely for me. And like hopefully what I'm about to say doesn't convince a bunch of people to start a podcast, although they're more than welcome to. But it's just allowed me to get closer access to the people that I want to. And like, when you're at a magic convention, like, oh my God, there's that guy. Like if I interviewed him like 6 months ago, it just makes that a lot easier
Yeah.
and makes me a lot more comfortable chatting and jamming and hanging out with those people. So it's kind of for me, like it helps and I like to share cool stuff, but for the interviews, I just chase who I'm
Mhm.
most interested in and interview them.
It's I gotta say, it's refreshing to hear someone say basically the same thing that goes through my head all the time, where I'm like, man, I'd love to be better friends with R. Paul Wilson. I know how become
Totally.
better friends with him while I'm on the podcast.
Well, I assume you don't have a giant 5 foot penguin breathing down your throat, telling you, puppeteering it. I have a feeling that you're choosing more or less who you want to have on the show, unless there's a big release or a project or something like that. So, it's probably pretty similar.
Yeah, no, it is very similar, and also it's not a 5 foot penguin; it's a 10 foot penguin. He's an
Yeah,
absolute monster. Let's
that's what I think.
let's talk about the coaching, because so at Magi Fest this year, your booth was like right next to mine, and I watched you sit down with person after person after person. First of all, what is the coaching, and then
Yeah.
let's talk about how you got into it.
Yep. So I help magicians grow the business. By just giving a really quick overview, I have two sort of versions of that I do. One is called the gigs program, which I just help magicians get gigs. It's more about like your first few gigs. Those are for, cool cats doing under 25K a year, trying to like just get the basics sorted, like how to price, how to get leads, how to make our website, how to do a sales call, like just the basics. And then the other thing I run is the Mastermind, which is basically helping magicians go from the 25, 35, 50K a year to like 100, 150, 200, 250, so on. And, in any sort of like system, here, my math background's going to go bonkers right now, but in any system, there are these natural plateaus that people hit. And there's a plateau that happens around like 10 or 15K where like you just kind of start doing it and you're like, some people call me, I quote $500, I book a few, I don't know what to do. That's like sort of one plateau. And then the other one happens around like 50 or 60 where you kind of have some things going but you haven't explored more. You probably need to raise your prices, make your promo better, things like that. And then there's another plateau around the like 100 or 150K a year mark where you're just so damn busy that you cannot map out the time to scale and do any of the scaling things like hiring people and using the right softwares and leaning into other lead generating strategies. So I help magicians with the business. The overview, I guess me giving an overview of the mastermind is kind of like the best way because it like
Yeah.
touches on all the things, which is there's three parts of a magic business, of any business, but of a magic business, which is leads, like how you get the people in the door, sales, how you convert those people to hire you, and then systems, all of the like operations and behind the scenes of how you do it. I'm going to take an extra minute to break those down again into like three each. So leads is inbound, people inquiring from you. That's ads, SEO, word of mouth, gig sites, things like that. Outbound, you reaching out to the people that you want to do gigs for. That's cold calls, cold emails, cold DMs, things like that. And then past client relationships. So everyone who's ever booked you, everyone who's ever almost booked you, and then all your peers and friends and people like that. Sales kind of breaks down into three parts, which is what we call rockstar promo material. So just making your stuff jump off the page. Pricing and packaging, how you offer your stuff so that you can, make more money and do more gigs. And then the sales process. So everything from the inquiry to the sales call to the follow-ups to the post event, all that stuff. And then systems is hiring. So getting the right people, whether it's a full-time assistant or like someone to design your website so it doesn't look like you designed it. There's the actual like tech. So sometimes that is software, CRM, anything that you're using to operate the business in the background. And then work-life balance, which is like we want to make sure that your magic business doesn't devolve into you working 8 hours at a computer and then 3 hours at night every night, because then it sucks. You're sort of running two businesses. So those are all of the regions that we work on. I'm happy to give you more details about how like the mastermind itself works, but
Yeah.
those are the stuff that we work on.
Yeah. Like, so how, well, I want to come back to how you work on it. How did you get into it? Because if you, I mean, there's, I want to say this without sounding terrible and insulting, because I am deeply fascinated by this. Because if you are successful in running your business, focusing on running your business would make you more money, but helping other people is also a great way to make money. And so I'm just like, and I know candidly what you are doing in the background, and that you are a very successful up there in Toronto. And so how did you sort of transition into this coaching element?
So I'll tell you two stories. The first is the story of how this specifically started, and then the second is the one that probably is going to make me seem much more cleverer than I am. So, the story of how this specifically started is, over the course of the lifetime of the podcast, I have sold different things. I have sold a couple of things that sort of resembled this, a course, a coaching. I sold a book. I sold a t-shirt. There's like 40 magicians in the planet that sometimes have a convention. I just laugh and hug them too. So I've sold sort of a random array of stuff. And then the pandemic was a really funny time because everyone was all over the map. And Ben and I here in Canada, we had sort of the opportunity, I remember the day Ben came to me and he's like, the government is going to pay us to not work. So let's not work. The way it worked for the Canadian government was like, if you're making over a certain amount, then they don't pay you. But if your like revenue disappeared, then they'll pay you. So he was like, bro, let's take a 2-month vacation, whatever it was. And I was like, you know what? I have a feeling that's what everyone's going to do. And I'm going to be bored out of my mind. So why don't we do the opposite? And why don't we like go hard and just like do everything? So we ended up doing so much in the pandemic. We did, I don't know, but I can tell you probably the most virtual show of any Canadian virtual performer, if not top 5, top 10, whatever. We did our 5 virtual magic conventions, those 8-bit magic conventions, unconventional.fun. And during that time, I've been a huge advocate always in my life of just like, teach what you know. That's sort of how the podcast has been. I've just taught all the things I learned. And in that time, we were one of the magicians that were on the forefront of virtual. So I started running different sessions for the Discourse and Magic audience through the newsletter and the Instagram, whatever, for virtual. Everything from like how to use Ecamm Live and how to set up the space and how to do the sound to like how to book a gig in virtual and how much to charge and what to put in the act and whatever. And over that time, it just escalated and escalated, and people were asking me like, can you help? Like, will you work with me? Like, will you help me grow the business? Will you help me with the show? Will you help me with that? So that's kind of how it started. And then I was waking up in the morning doing 10 straight hours of 30-minute back-to-back calls and then going to sleep and doing that again. And that was stupid. And it was stupid not only for me because I couldn't breathe and couldn't run the Toronto Magic Company, but it was also dumb because by like day 5, I would have had the same conversation 9 times. And I'm like, wouldn't it be smarter if we put all these people doing the exact same thing all in one room together and taught them the thing? Or on top of that, wouldn't it be smarter if I recorded this lesson so that when someone says, how do you do this? I don't have to get on another call. And like, why don't I do it once? Awesome. Make the worksheets, make the templates, make the everything so people can copy and paste. And that way people can do it and then ask me for advice on it instead of asking for advice about how to do it. Like, it's like hiring someone to help you with your show. There's nothing worse than you hire someone and they tell you a bunch of advice that you already know. And you're like, I should have implemented this advice first and then paid you money to consult on my show. The other way around is like such a waste for us both because you're telling me stuff I know and I paid money for someone to tell me stuff I know. So that was how it started. That's the like real, that's like the real answer of how this came to be.
Mm-hmm.
The like answer that's going to make me sound 5% smarter than I am, which I'm probably not, is that when I started the podcast in 2016, I was learning in the world of online business and entrepreneurship and whatever. And I had the thesis that if I had an audience at some point, I don't know what it is, I will have something to sell them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is, but a lot of dollars are exchanged in the magic business. It could be clothing, it could be affiliates for tricks, it could be my own trick. I didn't know what it was. So I kind of just put my head down and built a podcast. And for a really long time, which it still might be, by the way, because a lot of people ask about this, but I thought it was going to be a beautiful coffee table book with the top interviews with their like lessons and things like that. A bitch to produce, obviously, you know.
Yeah.
So haven't done that yet. But it sort of ended up being the coaching. You know, the coaching ended up being the thing where I shared what I did. And as Ben and I had successes, I do the business part of our company as well as some of the shows. But as Ben and I had successes, I would just turn around and teach it. And when we had failures, I'd be like, don't do this. Or like, if anybody has a different way of doing this, like, great, but don't do it the way that I did it because it didn't work. So that's kind of how it came to be. The magic of our stuff working out in COVID because we were going so hard and me teaching it, plus the kind of thing in the background of being like, at some point, maybe I'll have something to sell to an audience, but like, I don't know what it is. And like I said, ended up not being t-shirts because all the money went to the t-shirt company and it was just impossible. And it didn't end up being ebooks and it didn't end up being like, there's a lot of things that it didn't end up being that I tried over from 2016 to mid to late 2020. But coaching ended up being the thing that people really need.
I've got a lot of friends who are in the Mastermind program, and they speak pretty highly of it, and I've seen them definitely growing their business. On one hand, it does seem a little bit like, you know, if you pay for this, you are incentivized to actually like implement the things you learn, and so it's a great way to sort of hold yourself accountable. But on the other hand, it like sounds like they're learning like really important stuff. I mean, what are some basic mistakes that you see a lot of people making when they're trying to build their magic business?
Yeah. I want to comment on that first thing first, because you're 100% right. You know, like a lot of the times people are afraid to be serious about what they're doing. And one of the guys, Kelvin, who lives in Vancouver, great magician, and he joined the mastermind. I think he's okay with me sharing numbers, but anyways, he went from basically 50K to 250K in 3 years inside of the mastermind, which is insane. Like that's life-changing difference in your yearly revenue. And it's because he implemented all the stuff. So I hired him as a coach in the mastermind. So people get help from me, as well as him, as well as our Google Ads guy, as well as a guy named Jeff, and a bunch of cool things. But he said something which I thought was so clever, which is, you know, I chat with a lot of people to join the mastermind, and I walked them through what it is and how it works and the pricing and all that. And there's guarantees so that people aren't in the hole as they didn't like paying for a gym membership and not going. So like, we don't quite work like that. But handful of people are like, you know what? You know, I don't think that it's for me. And it's fear, right? It's fear about spending a bunch of money. It's fear about investing in yourself and doubting that it's going to work. Not just that I work. I got enough proof that like they're like faith in their own self. And Kelvin said something amazing to me, which is like the same people that are afraid to join the mastermind are the same people that are afraid to try new stuff in their business. Like, how long have you been thinking about running Google Ads but never done it? Or how long has it been a good idea to make content but you didn't do it? Or how long have you been thinking about hiring a more expensive videographer to get a good, like all of the stuff that the same people that have been ruminating about the thought of doing that but never pulled the trigger are the same people that don't pull the trigger to join us with all the guarantees in the world to make it work. They're like afraid to do it. So like what you're saying is right, not just in the sense that yes, there's information and help and support and guarantees and all that stuff, but yeah, like a lot of the times it's just someone being like, bro, you're here. So like, it's like, hey, you should run ads. Great. Now I'm part of the mastermind. What should I do? It's like, great. Now that you're paying to be a part of this, now you should run ads, and we have all the systems and stuff, but like, now do it, like, so a lot of that is true. But the other thing that's so interesting is that it really helps us. Like, the mastermind isn't just me helping people, it's a community. And it's pretty cool that it helps me self-select, kind of like what we were talking about for the podcast, for the people that do stuff, like the people that will try things. They're the ones who are there. They're the ones who are in it because they're willing to be like, I guess you guaranteed my result. You have unlimited testimonials of people. Multiple people I know are in it. Like, yeah, I think I can give it a go. And those are the same people where we're like, okay, you're going to do cold email. Here's the templates. Here's people that are doing it. Here's their results. Here's how to set it up. Go and do it. And they don't hem and haw for 8 months about doing it. They just go, okay, I see the data. It looks like it works. I trust you. Let's do it. So just wanted to comment on that first, because I think it's such an interesting situation where it's kind of like, it's closer to hiring a personal trainer than it is a gym membership, because you cannot go to the gym, but the personal trainer is knocking at your door and ideally teaching you things about how to grow your muscles or lose weight or whatever it is that you're doing more than you would have known.
By the way, everything that you just said absolutely applies to a lot of your magic world. Like the people who are going, man, how do you create a trick? Well, I don't know. I screw around with magic stuff and eventually like something happens, right? Like if you just sit and think about creating a trick or sit and think about, coming up with something, it's different than actually like getting the cards out, playing around with it, doing your research and then doing it. I mean, this is not rocket science, but it is the truth. You're 100% right.
Just to go on a funny little tangent to talk about the podcast for a second is like, how many more people can I interview about creativity and ask them about how to be creative and get the same goddamn answer of like, well, I have a workshop and in that workshop I build stuff, or well, I play with tricks and I show it to people and I keep playing and then this is what I end up with, or like it's the same thing. And now I'm kind of like afraid to ask people about creativity because what the hell else are they gonna say? Like, there's no one's got like a fountain of youth that they're drinking from to get all their good ideas. Like, this is how you be creative. You have to play. Like, you have to do the stuff. So it's the same thing for business. You do have to do the stuff to uncover new things that work.
So where are you, what actually, like, what does it look like when you're inside the mastermind program? Like what's an average meeting of this community like?
Yep. So there's a couple pieces that sort of make it possible. There's like the plan, the tools, and the help. So first, the plan. When I get started working with someone, we basically do a top-down look at their business, and we make a plan for like, what are the major projects they need to work on, and make sure they know how to get help doing that. And then also 4 times a year, all the members of the mastermind all get together and plan out the next 90 days. Because as you can imagine, waiting to do in January, February, March, waiting to do in October, November, December are 2 completely different things. So we make sure that people are working on the right stuff at the right time. One of those meetings, by the way, happens in Mexico, all-inclusive, super fun, rad event. And then 3 of those are online, like multi-day sort of like magic conventions, but online. So that's the plan. The tools is how we make sure everyone knows how to do the stuff. So there's a content bank with videos and worksheets and templates and over the shoulders of all of the stuff that we teach. All of those, I told you about the lead sales systems and all of that stuff. There's videos and tools and templates and over the shoulders about how to do all of that, plus way, way, way more. There's something we do called the 10K Mastermind, which is members of the mastermind teaching stuff that gets recorded and goes in the content bank that's worth at least 10K in your business if you do it. Like, there's someone who's made like over 150K doing just SEO, and there's someone who makes like 10K every quarter doing like workshops, after school workshops with kids, and on and on and on. So we got those. And then we've got live workshops. So there's 4 workshops a month on different subjects that people can attend live. And sometimes it's me, sometimes it's a guest, sometimes it's a mastermind member teaching something. That stuff goes in the content bank. We got my Google Ads guy who's responsible for, crushing our ads, who does a weekly session that people can log in and get their ads looked at, and those get recorded in the content bank. So there's a lot of content, so stuff to do. And again, we tell people, don't binge it, because if it was about information and not implementation, we'd all be billionaires with six-pack abs. So instead of binging it, take the plan we gave you, go work on that stuff, get it done, get our feedback, and then move on to the next project. So we talked about the plan, we talked about the tools, and then the help. So a couple ways to get help. There's a weekly Win the Week call every Monday, where everyone shows up and we say, hey, what'd you say you were going to do last week? What'd you actually do last week? And then problem solving. So people bring up any stocks, and myself and other people are there to help. There is a private Facebook group, which is not a Facebook group about people arguing about new Magic releases and crediting. That's not our that's not our vibe. It's just mastermind members, people doing 50, 100, 150, 200K a year, all there to help each other and problem solve. There is Kelvin, who I told you about already, who is a coach as well in the mastermind now. So if people need his help, then they send him a message and he schedules a one-on-one to do whatever. Like some people are like, hey, I'm setting up this, landing page for the first time. Can you just look over my shoulder while I do it to make sure like I'm doing nothing wrong? And then there's me, which is what I call the red button, which is my personal WhatsApp number. So if something goes horribly wrong in your business or horribly right, and you need some help, send me a message and we'll get it sorted within 24 hours. So whether it's like another pandemic or someone wants to book you for a multi-show tour or whatever, you don't know how to price it, send me a message and we get it sorted within the next 24 hours. So there's a lot. But the whole point of it is that A, you always know what to do. B, you know how to get help when it is that you're doing it. And C, there's always support and people to compare and people to see what they're doing and see what's going on. And we get some crazy data because we got like 45 magicians. We know what busy months of the year are. We know we can tell you when to go on your vacation. Like on average, if you're planning your vacation a few months in advance, we can be like, you're probably not going to book a gig, in February. That's the worst month across the board. So like book your vacation then, don't book it in October, November, December. So an average week, just to say one more thing about it, an average week is people come to the Win the Week calls. They post any questions or stocks or problems or anything in the Facebook group. They come to the session or not about whatever it is we're working on. It could be us doing sales call trainings and doing dummy calls so they can learn, or it could be me teaching a new system of LinkedIn ads or whatever. And then if they're currently running Google ads, they can come to the Google ads call and get eyes from an expert on what it looks like. And then once a quarter, we all get together, see how they're doing on the goals that they set and that we set, and then basically plan new goals for the next quarter.
Where, what, this is like really fascinating stuff, and it makes me sort of go, well, if things ever go south for me at Penguin, I know the first
that giant 10-foot penguin is frowning right now.
No, this sounds fantastic. Where can listeners find out more about the Mastermind if they want to sort of join and hold themselves accountable?
I'll give you an email address, which is magic@torontomagic.com. And then the other thing I'll just tell you is Discourse and Magic, which is the name of the podcast, on Instagram or the website, whatever. Like, come, as a weird sentence to say, but come sniff my butt. Like you're possibly hearing about me for the first time on a podcast and you're like, what is this guy? And you may not want from a random email to come and be a part. Like, sniff my butt. I put out a lot of content. There's a lot of work. Every couple months I do like a public workshop on something. I got videos, I got testimonials, come sniff my butt. Listen to the podcast. Go listen to the business only episodes that I run about this or that. And if you like it, then send me a message. And if you hate it, then cool. It's free anyways. So if you directly want to know, magic@torontomagic.com. But my advice is just go follow me on, I would say, your favorite platform. It's basically Instagram, Facebook, whatever. Follow me there, sniff my butt, listen to the podcast, and then send me a message. And that's what that like strategy call that we do is first is you sniff my butt, I sniff your butt. And we both sort of figure out because like what's so weird is that the product or the mastermind is the community. Mm-hmm. The product is the people. So if someone shits in the pool, no one wants to be in the pool anymore. So I have to be picky about who is invited to be a part of it. So aside from there being revenue minimums, there's also like, a couple other things that I do, both like technical things to make sure that someone's a good fit. like revenue dollars or other aspects that they need to have in their business, as well as like emotional things. Like if I wouldn't have invite this person to my house for dinner as like a bare minimum, then like I don't want them in the community. I'm gonna be talking to them every week for like a year, like
Yeah.
so I don't want them in the community. So it's the uh application process is both a chance for you to learn more about us and us to learn more about you and all that.
Jonah, thanks so much for spending some time with me talking on the podcast, and I can't wait to actually go catch up on my Discourse and Magic podcast because I listen all the time.
Yeah, man, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. This is awesome. I love it. We're like podcast cousins, out there in the universe. Every year when people share their Spotify Wrapped, it's like you and me neck and neck up there. I'm having fun. So such a blast, much appreciated. And yeah, man, let's do some fun stuff. And if anyone needs anything, has questions, anything like that, send me a message.
That's going to do it for this week, kids. Thanks so much to Jonah for being on the show, and thanks to you for listening. I don't know about you, but improving my magic business sounds pretty appealing. I might just look a little bit more into this group. Well, as you are listening to this, the final Winter Carnival of Magic is getting into full swing, and then on Sunday, I hop on a plane for Las Vegas, where I'll see you all at the Mystify Magic Convention. Seems like convention season comes earlier and earlier every year. I can't wait to see all the Penguin fans at Mystify. Be sure to stop by the booth and also hang out with me in some of the late night sessions. I'm sure we can teach each other some cool stuff. As always, we're a weekly podcast, so be sure to like and subscribe, as well as share your favorite episodes on the social media platform that you've been looking for convention info on. If you wanted to reach out to me about anything on this week's show, you're going to have to send me a note written in code on the back of the Declaration of Independence. I'm about to spend a lot of time on planes, and given how often they seem to be falling out of the sky these days, I'm going to go down watching National Treasure. It's seriously one of the best movies. It's so good. But if stealing the Declaration of Independence isn't your cup of tea, you can always hit me up on Instagram at Eric Tate. That's at ERIKTAIT. From me and everyone here at the P3 Magic Studios, practice, practice, perform.
Well, there you have it. I hope you liked the episode, and I hope, of course, that you learned something. I think I mentioned sniffing butts a couple too many times in this episode. So please, if you meet me at a magic convention, do not sniff my butt. However, if you do want to do something good for me that has nothing to do with my butt, please vote for me to win the FISM Award for Magic Podcaster. I'm very excited that I was nominated, and now I get to spread the word to get some votes. I put the link in the description of this episode. Thanks so much for being here. Hope you learned and liked something, and I'll see you next Thursday. Ciao.